Votes at 5:30 on sanctions against countries that manipulate their currency, such as China. And part of that debate, a vote on moving forward with the president's jobs bill, as changed by Democratic leader Harry Reid. The Senate's live on C-SPAN 2, and now the House here on C-SPAN.
The House will be in order. The Chair lays before the House a communication from the Speaker.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., October 11, 2011. I hereby appoint the Honorable Martha Roby to act as Speaker pro tempore on this day. Signed, John A. Boehner, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Pursuant to the order of the House of January 5, 2011, the Chair will now recognize members from lists submitted by the majority and minority leaders for morning hour debate. The Chair will alternate recognition between the parties, with each party limited to 1 hour, and each member other than the majority and minority leaders and the minority whip limited to 5 minutes each. But in no event shall debate continue beyond 1:50 p.m. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. DeFazio, for 5 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Connolly, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ask Americans their priority and they'll tell you jobs. There are 14 million Americans out of work. There are 9.3 million more Americans working part-time because they can't find full-time employment. There are millions more Americans whose income has stagnated because of the persistent unemployment which dragged down economic growth. In fact, median household income has fallen 9.8% since the recession first began in 2007. More troubling, although the overall economy has been growing again, household incomes continue to fall. Since December of 2007, American households have lost more than $5,400 per average household. There are several factors leading to this decline. One of the most significant is that in order to find work, many millions of unemployed Americans are forced to accept lower pay. With millions of Americans still desperately searching for jobs, businesses can't afford to offer lower wages. With millions of American families slipping below the poverty line and wondering where the next mortgage payment or meal will come from, prospective workers can't afford not to take the pay cut. It's clear we must pass the America Jobs Act. This is a plan that reduces business taxes to encourage private sector hiring and then increases infrastructure investment to repair and rebuild America, creating jobs. And it cuts taxes for every working American. While the lingering effects of the worst recession in 80 years continue to drive down Americans' income, we can increase their take-home pay with the American Jobs Act, putting more money back in the pockets of average American families. Increasing American paychecks and creating jobs, that ought to be our priority. But Republicans in Congress have a different priority: cutting. Last Congress, Republicans' big marketing blitz wasn't about creating jobs, it was cutting. Last Congress, Democrats passed business taxes to spur job creation, approving infrastructure improvements to create construction jobs, and backstopping faltering state and local education funding to save teaching jobs. And we saw results. The Great Recession resulted in 8 million jobs lost, but thanks to our efforts like the Recovery Act and the HIRE Act, we created 2.6 million jobs. A good start, but not enough. But what were the Republicans doing last year? They were trumpeting their You Cut program. Perhaps if Democrats had named our efforts You Hire program, Republicans might have taken more notice. Unfortunately, through fighting and threatening, delaying and denigrating, Republicans have made clear that cutting remains their top priority. Their first bill introduced this year, H.R. 1, wasn't about jobs. It was all about cuts. In fact, economists predicted it would cost 200,000 jobs. Surely their second bill was about jobs. No, H.R. 2 tried to repeal important health reforms so that people with pre-existing conditions wouldn't be protected, so that parents wouldn't be able to keep their kids on insurance, especially in tough times, through the age of 26, so that the donut hole for our seniors could be closed and they could get a 50% brand name drug discount this year. But if Republicans' voodoo really worked, then why isn't our economy better? Why are American incomes still dropping? The entire year in place of actual job creation legislation, the Republicans have focused instead on ever-increasing cuts. And since the beginning of the year, the economy has faltered. Their single-minded focus on attacking public sector employees has paid off. We've lost 535,000 public jobs all across America. It's time to invest in America again. Let's support the America Jobs Bill. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Poe, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the United States government has facilitated smuggling automatic weapons into Mexico, weapons that were purchased by straw buyers in the United States with the oversight of the ATF. Approximately 2,000 weapons were knowingly sent to our neighbors in Mexico by our government. Most of them are still unaccounted for, but we do understand that those weapons probably have been used illegally in Mexico to kill Mexican nationals. How many? No one knows. 2 of those automatic weapons have turned up at the murder scene in Arizona of Border Patrol agent Brian Terry, and 1 weapon apparently was used to gun down U.S. agent Jaime Zapata in Mexico. Now, the Mexican government has taken to the airways complaining of the U.S. smuggling operation. Mexican officials want answers and even want U.S. government officials responsible to be extradited to Mexico for trial. No wonder. Madam Speaker, let me be clear. These weapons are not BB guns or .22 rifles. They are semi-automatic weapons and also include sniper rifles. Sniper rifles are used to assassinate specific targets. The ATF and the Justice Department have stonewalled the release of information regarding this operation called Fast and Furious. And the public's not getting much data on this idiotic idea. Now, why would the U.S. government send automatic weapons to the drug cartels in Mexico? Mexico is at war with the drug cartels. The drug cartels are the enemy of the Mexican people, not to mention they are the enemy of the United States. This gun-running issue is nonsense. Now the Justice Department is supposed to investigate this operation, which includes investigating the ATF and the Justice Department. The Attorney General, who's head of the Justice Department, at first said he didn't know anything about this operation until recently. Now it seems evidence shows he was given a memo last year about the whole idea. Did he not read the memo? Granted, the Attorney General has experience not reading important documents, like the Arizona immigration law. You remember, Madam Speaker, the Attorney General publicly criticized the Arizona bill, and then he testified before the Judiciary Committee to a question I asked him that he hadn't even read that bill. Anyway, if he didn't know about the smuggling operation, he should have. He's in charge. And if he did know about it and approved it, he should be held accountable for this nonsense. I'm not sure what the Attorney General's claim of defense will be this week. Reminds me of my days on the bench as a judge in Texas, when a defendant in a homicide case would say first, I wasn't there. And then he would say, well, if I was there, it wasn't me. And if it was me, I acted in self-defense. In other words, don't hold me accountable. So just what is the Justice Department's defense to all this? We shall see. But the idea that the Justice Department should investigate the Justice Department and the ATF is absurd. The Justice Department has no credibility on this matter, and whatever their investigation shows, the American public cannot trust its trustworthiness. Having the Justice Department investigate Fast and Furious, the ATF, and the Justice Department is like having Al Capone investigate bootlegging. The President should appoint a special counsel to investigate this operation of government gun running to Mexico. And that's just the way it is. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. DeFazio, for 5 minutes.
Well, at last, it's been a long year. The House this week is finally getting around to considering legislation to create jobs. I mean, you got to admit, their objective of delivering on a government, the dream of Grover Norquist, so small that you can drown it in a bathtub, has kind of a depressive effect on investment in the economy. You know, cutting investment in education, it's lost jobs, hasn't created jobs. Cutting investment in infrastructure, 28% unemployment, construction, allied trades, small businesses that provide the work and the equipment, all private sector jobs, nah, not too good. So their pursuit of these goals so far this year has had a bit of a depressive and negative effect on the economy. But to congratulate the Republican leaders, finally, they've turned to creating jobs this week. 3 trade agreements. Now, these are kind of musty, dusty trade agreements. They were negotiated by the Bush administration. Unfortunately, they have been adopted by the Obama administration. Nothing ever changes down at the Trade Representative's office. Doesn't matter who's in charge. Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, George Bush, Barack Obama, people in the trade office push the same policies. So these are job-creating trade agreements. Congratulations. We're building upon the success of the past. NAFTA, great success. The WTO, great success. Job creation, phenomenal job creation. The only problem is the jobs are being created in foreign nations because of our failed trade policies in this country. We are hemorrhaging jobs. This is the record over a decade. We lost 15 factories a day. 15. Now, some of them were kind of small, local small business, but Republicans love to talk about their advocacy for small business. 15 a day for 10 years. That's our current trade policy. And so what else? Well, that figures out to about 1,370 manufacturing jobs a day over the last decade. So, learning from past experience, we are now going to do exactly the same thing yet again. We are going to adopt, I can predict the future, the Republicans will all vote for it, and a substantial number of my colleagues, a minority of Democrats, but they'll sign on too, to this false promise of job creation under the guise of free trade. According to the Economic Policy Institute, for starters, the Korea Free Trade Agreement will cost us 160,000 jobs. Bye-bye to the last vestiges of the auto parts industry. They have little provisions like 35% Korean content requirement, which means they can source all their stuff from China, or maybe even better, North Korea, where they use slave labor. It'll be really cheap. And we're going to ask our workers to compete with that. There goes another industry. Now, Colombia and Panama. Well, EPI estimates they're kind of dinky economies. That only loses about 55,000 jobs to start. So for starters, we're creating 250,000 jobs overseas with more failed trade policies. There are other minor problems. Colombia, they kill labor organizers, but hey, they promised they won't do that anymore. Panama, huge haven for drug smugglers, terrorists' money and others. They launder money, but they promised the Obama administration, even though Bush said they could keep doing it, they promised the Obama administration they won't do it. They will no longer allow people to secret ill-gotten gains in Panama unless it's in their national interest. Well, that's a little bit of a loophole. So these are a great deal for the American people. How's that? I don't know. Because the Special Trade Representative's office, unfortunately, rather meekly and quietly, the President and the Republican leadership say these are a good deal for the American people. Because, yes, they will benefit Wall Street and a few multinational corporations. They'll just cost another 250,000 Americans their jobs. It's time to put an end to this craziness. We can hope, but it won't happen, that we could stop these trade agreements here this week on the floor and look for a new trade policy that actually creates and brings jobs home to the United States of America. I thought that's who we were here to represent.
The gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There are many times that we come to the floor to address our current plight, and I do wish to say to the American people that we're well aware of the importance of jobs and the focus of creating those jobs. And I'd offer to you that most economists will say that job creation is a public and private partnership. That is a very important issue. I rise today, however, as, again, those who seek the Republican nomination for the presidency of the United States will come before the American people this evening. They will present a number of issues. This time it will be jobs. I hope they will present themselves in a manner that acknowledges that anyone who has the privilege of serving serves on behalf of the American people. And the American people come from all backgrounds, and I respect that. In particular, I'm going to ask the governor of the state of Texas, in his good vices and his beliefs in the equality of all, to reflect upon a decision that is about to be made in the state of Texas. And that is a decision in 2011 to issue a Confederate license plate. Confederate. The same group of individuals who opted to secede from the Union. Now, I am here as someone who applauds and appreciates the sacrifice that any person in uniform makes. I will not step away from the idea that much blood was shed in the Civil War. But what I am offering to say is that in 2011, it would be a disgrace, it would be outrageous to uplift the Confederacy on a license plate in the state of Texas. Let me tell you why. First of all, one of the most heinous tragedies of this great country's history was the holding of slaves. More importantly, millions of slaves destined for the United States and the Americas died in that dark passage before they even got to this soil. The brutality of slavery is without doubt and without question. The state of Texas remained enslaved, meaning those who were in that state for 2 years longer than any other place in the United States, because we did not get notice for 2 years after President Lincoln declared the Emancipation Proclamation. Who wants to ignite and remind you of that kind of devastating history? And so as the Texas Motor Vehicle Department makes a decision, I beg of their members to recognize that this is not a uniting action, it is a dividing action, because the action would be a state-issued plate that would affirm the brutality against African Americans, against slaves, against the ancestors who paid with their life to rebuild this country or to build this country. There was no debt ever paid for slavery. 400 years for the dividing of families, the brutality against children, the hanging, and the brutality that continued even into Jim Crow. And as we look to the honoring of the monument of Dr. Martin Luther King this coming week, I beg of my fellow Texans on this board to recognize that this is a national issue. It is a national issue of prominence, because to issue a Confederate license plate is to go and do what many states have undone, the removing of the symbols of the Confederacy, the taking away of the rebel name for the University of Texas. Why? Because they believe in moving America forward and focusing on such things as bringing our troops home and honoring them, focusing on such things as creating jobs. And how heinous would it be to have the state of Texas, the largest, one of the largest states in the nation, for its young men who are on the front lines of African-American heritage in Iraq and Afghanistan, and for them to come home and have to look at a Confederate license plate. This is not free speech. This is not freedom of speech, because anyone who desires to promote that particular life and legacy, they are so allowed to do so. They may print anything in the privacy of their home, wear anything, put anything on their front yard, their backyard, but not a state-issued plate with Texas dollars embedded inside of that particular symbol. America is greater than that. I love this country. All of us are patriots because we love this nation no matter what side of the aisle. And I might remind you, Madam Speaker, that a Republican state senator, I want to thank him, has indicated that we should not have this kind of symbol in Texas. I beg you, Mr. Perry, tonight to speak to your higher angels and talk about bringing us together. Do not issue a Confederate license plate in the state of Texas, for God's sake, and God bless America.
The gentlewoman's time has expired. Members are reminded to direct their remarks to the chair. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the chair declares the House in recess until 2 p.m. today.
And when the House returns at 2 p.m. Eastern, they will consider a number of bills this afternoon dealing with veterans' benefits and later